Hello Aries, this is a timeless reading for you. I'm using my own tarot cards, my black and white duality tarot deck. And I feel like this is about something spiritual. Like there is a soul card next to the projection card. And actually the soul card is a very sweet card, but I'm getting a not so sweet vibe from it. There is something about some common and very modern spiritual teachings that you might soon see through. There's always, shifting trends in spirituality, just as there is in fashion, or people have a trend about everything. What kind of dog you are breeding, what I don't know, what kind of food is supposed to be healthy. Like then there are these so-called superfoods, and then 10 years later studies find out, oh, actually that superfood wasn't that super. It was just healthy, just as healthy as other foods. There are trends about everything. And it could be that within yourself deeply, you might come to a realization about some kind of spiritual teaching that just maybe never really made sense to you, but you just accepted it because it's in everyone's mouth, and so-called enlightened people, they all talk about it, but maybe due to a certain life experience, you might realize that this can't really be true, and I'm just gonna keep that open. I have a slight idea what this could be about, but I'm not gonna go into that. This is up for you to find that out, and I feel like you will find that out. There is, the future can be a good card, but it can also be, we have to be sustainable and to a certain degree on some level. We have to be capable of thinking in a sustainable way, but yet projecting into the future maybe too far ahead or too obsessively is yet also not always good. And we are still talking about this spiritual topic here, and projection and future together is not a perfect combination. Like there is something also constantly listening to these spiritual teachings often makes us project a lot into our future. Some people even project enlightenment into their future while they read books about being present and being in the now and all that. And then you think about it, but when you think about it, you are projecting it into the future somehow. And this is something about that. This reading is very spiritual. And there is something about spiritual bypassing as well that is embedded into it. There is something I'm feeling about hypocrisy and double standards in spiritual teachings, that you might realize that about some spiritual teachers or teachings in general, or both, that there is something that just doesn't make sense to you. And maybe, sometimes for a lot of us, it's also like this with people. We get to know a person and we sense some slight red flags, but we choose to ignore them and, fall for someone's charm. And this can also be the case with just some trendy teachings, trendy slogans, or just stuff that is going around and it's in everyone's mouth. And whether you ever felt or saw some red flags before or not, you might soon realize something for yourself, that actually thinking about this stuff itself is a projection into the future, and it actually distracts you from being very present and from finding, I don't like this expression, but sometimes I have no other expression. You know, there are some very common terms in the spiritual field, and I got so tired of all of them that sometimes I just don't want to use these expressions. But yeah, there's something that you might realize about these teaching and how actually these teachings ironically held you back from having your own realization and your own growth, your own spiritual path might have been blocked by this kind of spiritual conditioning. There's something about that. We are moving further into healing trauma and good. So don't worry, this is not a negative reading. This is just how my readings are. Sometimes I want my readings to be self-reflective. I don't want to promise people they will win the lottery, even though I think those things can be possible, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to have some good luck or financial abundance. Like I don't say that these things are bad, but I'd rather, keep it real somehow, keep it a little bit grounded. And whenever there is something that is seemingly negative or uncomfortable that's coming up in my readings, there is always a solution that's being offered as well. And as I said, I called this deck that I made Duality Tarot. So, nothing is ultimately negative here. I try to keep this deck as positive as possible. And there is a lot of positivity in your reading, because as we have those realizations, often a huge burden can be taken off. And there is something maybe from your childhood. It doesn't always have to be like this cliche psychology that everything is coming from our childhood, even though that's a very important and influential time in our life. But some people, their childhood was okay, or it was even good, but later as an adult they had a huge trauma, like a huge car accident, or even worse, like, things can happen to adults as well. You can have a really nice life for 26 years and then suddenly one day you're in the midst of a war, or someone abuses you in the worst imaginable way. These things happen, and some people experience their worst trauma as a grown-up, others as children, so it could be different for everyone. And there is an offer of healing regarding whatever this is. And I also want to connect this trauma card to this spiritual topic again, because often I feel like, especially people who experience child abuse or abuse during their childhood, whatever kind of abuse, we often feel drawn to the wrong type of spirituality. And later, sometimes after years, even after decades for some people, then they find out that some spiritual leaders actually were also abusive, and some people around them, they just didn't see it, and they thought this person was genuine. And then when we experience such things as a child, we often feel drawn to such situations unconsciously. Or if it's not like feeling drawn to a specific teacher, then it could be just a general teaching that is actually very victim blaming. I feel that is going on a lot in the spiritual communities. And I think like you might soon have some kind of realization about that. How actually keeping up these spiritual conditionings, like accepting them without having the proper experience that this is the ultimate truth, but because everyone speaks about it, you just somehow integrated that into your psyche and started to believe it, like an indoctrination. And you might realize that this was actually holding you back, believing in this kind of teaching or seemingly common knowledge that this was a hindrance to your healing, this kind of mindset. But there is, it's just gonna be good. It's gonna be fine. Like, this is just a very freeing realization that you're about to have. At the bottom of the deck, we have the pregnancy card, and this could be just for some of you, maybe you are expecting a child, or your partner is expecting a child, and for others this is just a metaphor for, she's very pregnant with ideas, with creativity, and she has a certain beauty around her, and this can just, be a phase or a new energy that you will be tapping into until you had this realization and freed yourself from this hindering conditioning. As soon as this kind of projecting into the future is over, this kind of blockage that it caused in your head, and you had this clearance of your thoughts that you had, will, be free to be creative. Literally, maybe you will do something artistic, or you will just, build something, invent a new meal, make your own recipes, something like that, just being creative. Or it just means, when we get back to the spiritual topic, that you find your own truth, your own spiritual path, without listening to someone else's ready-made answers, but that your head space is clear and clean and receptive enough to receive this divine connection, and to have your own realizations, not having to listen to other people's realizations. This is a very nice reading, very spiritual. So that's what I prefer my readings to be about. They are about different things sometimes. I never choose when I pull the cards what the reading is going to be about. I'm just very open. Sometimes romantic stuff comes up, sometimes work stuff comes up, but oftentimes these kind of things also come up. So it's going to get a little bit loud now. This is my new thing. I just recently found those in one of those cheap stores, €1 stores or $1 shop. So it's just some letters and numbers. Let's see. We have a 7. I'm going to start with the numbers. A 9 or 6, however you want to take it. 2. Oh no, and we have those weird, another 7. Okay. Sometimes I'm pulling these weird letters and I can't form any word. Oh, Jin. Let me just first go through the letters. We have G, I, N, X, Z, E, and Q. So there's something about EQ. Maybe you will realize that some spiritual teachers, they don't have a very high EQ. I find that very often, that some appear very cold and unempathetic, but I don't know, people still fall for this stuff. EQ. Then we have Zen. Maybe you will have some realizations about some Zen knowledge, and you will find for yourself that it doesn't make sense to you, or that it makes more sense than other kind of spiritual teachings, whatever. Maybe this is a message for someone. We have no. Jin. Is there some kind of name, maybe? No. I can't figure out anything else. Maybe quiz, but spelled wrong. We need a U. We don't have a U. Almost equinox, but not fully. There's a U and O missing, but I mean it's almost equinox. Maybe you're figuring out something for yourself, or maybe those are just some initials that are relevant to you. GIZIXNEQ, and we have 2779 or 2776. So I'm just gonna leave it here. Thank you for watching.